This week, I want to talk about the conservative movement and the disarray that the movement is currently in. I was privy to be at CPAC, the annual gathering of conservatives here in Washington, D.C. over the weekend. It featured people like Mitt Romney, Newt Gingrich, and of course, Rush Limbaugh. What I found to me most surprising about the CPAC event this year, I've been going to it now for many years, is I have never seen this amount of energy, enthusiasm, and determination among the conservative base. The sense that I got from almost every person that I spoke to is that Obama is taking America down a dangerous road to socialism, and they deeply fear for the future of this country. The grassroots is mobilized, they are ready, and many are talking about coming out in record numbers in the midterm elections in 2010 to stop Obama's domestic agenda dead in its tracks. The one thing that bothers me throughout this whole CPAC event that I attended is this delusion that many conservatives are under. From Newt Gingrich to Rush Limbaugh, the sentiment was that we are living in a center-right country, that conservatives form a natural majority, and all we have to do is rebrand or repackage the movement, and somehow, presto, Shazam, conservatives will ride back into power in 2010 and dethrone Obama in 2012. And this, to me, is a profound myth that is going to cripple the movement, and if we don't destroy this myth, it is the road to decline, defeat, and eventually oblivion. For what Newt Gingrich and Rush Limbaugh don't understand, because they live in a privileged life in their insular world with their adoring fans and their big contracts and their fawning sycophants and servile followers, is that the country has profoundly changed since Ronald Reagan. Throughout the entire CPAC conference, everybody was Ronald Reagan, and everybody was harking back to Ronald Reagan. Mitt Romney was Ronald Reagan. Ann Coulter, Newt Gingrich, Rush Limbaugh is Ronald Reagan. Well, if everybody is Ronald Reagan, then nobody is Ronald Reagan. And the point that all of these people don't understand is that Ronald Reagan is a once-in-a-century kind of politician and president. He was the greatest president of the 20th century. And his greatness lay not in the fact that he was optimistic or somehow he knew how to package the conservative movement. It's because he had profound character and he understood the profound greatness of America and what America stood for in the world. What Newt Gingrich and Rush Limbaugh do not understand is that for the last 20 years, the left has marched all the way into power. There is now a liberal revolution that has engulfed and encompassed this country. And since the 1960s, the left has been relentless in its pursuit of dominating our culture. They control the universities, the mainstream media, the arts, Hollywood. They control the public schools. They control, in other words, every institution of cultural power in this country. And now they control Congress and the White House. No amount of cheerleading, no amount of going around saying, well, if only we can be a little bit more articulate in our conservative principles, if only we can say tax cuts, limited government, and family values a little bit more effectively, somehow we will ride back into power and it will be the 1980s all over again. It won't. Because as you have pointed out again and again, and what the Washington conservative establishment does not understand, is that this country has been transformed. Language, borders, and culture. If you look at the major demographics and trends in this country, the Reagan coalition is being smashed and buried. White males and conservative evangelicals form an increasing minority in our country. You have seen, piece by piece, the creation of a leftist ethnic constituency that demands big government, that demands welfare, that demands more and more government services. In other words, they are pushing this country increasingly to the left. Just as Mexico is a socialist country, they are ultimately going to make America a socialist country. The Reagan Democrats are now long gone. They may be culturally conservative, but economically, they are opposed to free trade, and they want more big government and nationalized health care. We are losing every key component of the Reagan coalition. And what Barack Obama and the Democrats are now doing, they are slowly but surely buying off every key constituent group in this country. The real message behind the budget isn't just that it will bankrupt America. They are restitching a New Deal coalition that kept the Democrats in power for decades. And yet, as Washington burns, conservatives fiddle. Conservatives talk about reclaiming the politics and reclaiming Capitol Hill. Yet all around them, our border remains porous and unpoliced. Drug traffickers are coming in through this country. Criminals are coming in through this country. Nearly 20 million illegals have flooded this country, bringing their family members with them. Everywhere you go, more and more Americans are addicted to big government. And the point that Newt Gingrich and Rush Limbaugh do not understand is that when Barack Obama came out with his $787 billion stimulus package, the greatest government intervention in the peacetime in our economy in history, most Americans don't care. It was nothing to them. We are now slowly becoming a socialist country. And no amount of cheerleading, no amount of artificial enthusiasm is going to change that unless we confront the culture. And Michael, this to me is the mother of all points. In 1776, we Americans did something that has never been done before in the history of the world. We created on this land a republic that said, in the eyes of God and in the eyes of the law, everyone is created equal and will be treated equally. This is an experiment in freedom. Yet piece by piece, over the last 60 years, liberals in this country have been dismantling that experiment. And they have used every institution of cultural and economic and political power to achieve their goals. They are now on the cusp of transforming America into a European socialist state. The very thing that would make our founding fathers roll in their grave. And here we are with conservative prima donnas at CPAC, hawking their books, going on about all we have to do is wait for the Democrats to overreach and their incompetence will launch us into power. Well, why don't they answer this fundamental question? When the Democrats are incompetent under Bill Clinton, when we had Chinagate and Filegate and Travelgate and Monica Lewinsky, what did we get? We got George W. Bush. And when we got George W. Bush, we got open borders, massive deficits, unprecedented federal involvement in education, and a prescription drug coverage that we will never be able to pay. This is what we got. In other words, Republicans became more like Democrats. So the solution is not to wait for the Democrats to make a mistake. The solution is to do what our forefathers did in 1776, and that is to take the initiative in our own hands. If conservatives are to win, the solution does not lie in Sarah Palin or Bobby Jindal or Mitt Romney or Newt Gingrich or whatever candidate of the day that conservatives like to throw out. We have to take back our universities, our media, our public schools, television, Hollywood. In other words, we have to take back our country. And first and foremost, we have to say that on this country, on this soil, our borders are inviolable, that our national sovereignty is not for sale. And if you want to cross this border illegally, you are breaking the law. And we will send you back from where you came from. And we are not going to become Mexifornia. We are not going to become an appendage of Mexico and Latin America. And until conservatives understand that point, and until they realize that we are not a majority, but a minority the way our founding fathers were, when only 1/3 of Americans rose up against the British, they showed us that a minority that is determined, that a minority that believes in its principles can change the history of the world. And this is now our challenge. Will we as Americans, as free men and free women, will we say, finally, no to socialism, no to bailouts to the Wall Street fat cats, no to buying off interest groups and constituencies across this country, no to the destruction of the family, no to us pushing for appeasement in Iran and in Russia and in Gaza and in the face of Islamic radicalism, that we will no longer tolerate the destruction and the abandonment of America, but that we will live up to the heritage of our forefathers. This is the new American Revolution. It is the conservative revolution. If we take our stand on this ground, Michael, we will win because we have the truth. This is Jeff Kuhner at the Washington Times with his weekly special report to the Savage Nation.
Thanks, Jeff. Until these issues of borders, language, and culture are taken care of, we are in real danger of losing our country.